It's nice to be here, and thank you very much for the invitation today. It's nice to see some familiar faces. Yeah, I will just go through a quick presentation. First, I will just do a short introduction as well about Fair Ventures Worldwide, what we are and what we do. Then I will just highlight some opportunities for timber construction in Africa, how we have to prepare the sector to do more timber construction in Africa, and then also giving the example of our Timber Innovation Center in what we just recently constructed in Uganda, to do a showcase building for mass timber construction in Uganda. Yeah, I will just start with Fair Ventures Worldwide. We are an organization based in Germany. We are non-profit and working in reforestation projects and value chain development in Uganda and Indonesia. We are around 100 staff members in the 3 countries, and we are kind of a spin-off from Swiss Contact. And we are operating since 2013. Yes, thank you for the introduction before. I'm Simon. I'm the project manager for the timber value chain projects in Uganda. I'm based in Kampala. I'm just right now I'm in Switzerland for leave, but I will be back in East Africa in like 2 weeks. And yeah, I mean, most of us know the opportunities for timber construction, and I think I don't have to go too much into details here, just maybe as a repetition a bit. We have a low carbon footprint. We have a lot of advantages like high prefabrication, short time on the construction site. It's ideal for building expansions in urban areas as well. We don't have like water on the construction site. It's kind of dry, and it's a material which is very easy to handle and fabricate on site as well. We have good seismic performance, which is also a big benefit. The natural aesthetics can be a benefit, and of course it's like a regrowing building material, which is quite one of the most important like part of the benefits of timber construction. What does that mean in the African context? As Hans already mentioned before, we have a lot of sustainable managed forests in Africa. I'm also more into the East African region, but I'm sure it's like basically also in Western regions like this. And timber construction has a big potential for economic growth, economic development of a region or a country. And of course, it's an advantage when we can source the building materials locally, and we don't have to import like expensive steel beams or concrete or cement from far away, from abroad, and having high transportation costs. It would be good to source it as locally as possible. And timber can also be a material for affordable building solutions, not only, but it can definitely be a part of it, and can also help for the high urbanization and population growth we have in the region, and the lack of housing we will face in the next couple of years. Due to when we use the timber more in construction, automatically the value of the timber will increase, especially when it comes to high value products, like for example the mass timber products like glulam or CLT. We can add value, which makes it more interesting for the tree growers to plant more trees, which is also a big advantage. And Africa, or yeah, in general, Africa, I would say, has a big potential for global exports as well. Is it as either as sawn timber, as a mass timber product, but it has a big potential for export to the global to the global world. As Hans already mentioned before, I think we have a lot of like different steps or different topics where I see we definitely have to work on, and where I see a lack of the standard we have at the moment in East Africa. And one thing is we have to prepare the sector in these different topics, and we have to have timber from sustainable forests. That one, I would say we can guarantee that. And then we have to have the quality assurance, which is a very important topic, because without good quality timber, we will never produce any mass timber products. And then, of course, it needs the industry, it needs the productions for the products like the glulam productions or the CLT productions locally. And the most important part, what Hans also mentioned before, is standards and norms. We need to have national or regional regulations and standards for like different steps for the sawmills to grade and sort the timber correctly. And then for the production lines, but then also for the architects and the engineers who are finally designing and calculating, dimensioning the buildings. They need to have standards which are accepted from the authorities and the government to build with timber. And I think that goes to the next point of acceptance, which is very important, the acceptance of local authorities to accept timber as a building material, and also the acceptance of the developers, the architects, the engineers, that this is a proper building material. And then, yeah, we need to have the engineers, the local architects, the local engineers who know how to design proper timber buildings. And we need to have, last but not least, we need to have the craftsmen who can finally also construct the building. It doesn't make sense when we plan a lot of timber buildings, but we don't have anyone who can finally implement it on site. Now I would just go a bit into sustainable forestry from the Fair Ventures approach. It's a different one than we saw it from the large-scale plantation forest from Hans before. Fair Ventures is in small scale. We are working with like different communities, different nurseries all over the country, all over Uganda in that case. And we do train the communities in agroforestry practices, how to combine the trees with crops and planting fruits in between, that they have like a short-term incentive from the crops and fruits, and the long-term would then be the trees which are there. In future, we are also, we have developed an application called Trio, which is in tree monitoring, where we can collect data of every single tree which the farmer is planting. And in future, we would like to access or bring the access to the farmers for the carbon markets to benefit from carbon removals. And last but not least, we are working with the communities, with smallholder farmers, also to reduce the pressure on the natural forests. When we plant trees with them, the incentive to plant their own trees on degraded land instead of entering into the natural forests. This is the application I just mentioned before. It's called Trio, where we do single tree monitoring. It brings a lot of transparency of data, like we know where every single tree is, how old he is, and what amount of carbon is stored in the trees. And the final goal would then be to trace like the timber from the tree up into the building. Yeah, small-scale forestry practices has also a lot of challenges when it comes to production, or when we want to see how can the small-scale farmers access the market for the mass timber products. it's quite challenging because, of course, small and medium growers are usually distributed somewhere in very rural areas where the accessibility is hard, maybe bad roads, and they usually process the timber with mobile bandsaws in the forests, which doesn't make the quality better. And of course, there the commercial forestry has definitely a better situation with high technology processing facilities and also kiln dries to create or to produce like a proper raw material for mass timber products. And but this can also be solved with like clusters or joint mills where the smallholder farmers can access, and to joint forces to increase the quality of the timber from smallholder farmers. Then we have to plant the right species, and there of course we have kind of like criterias from the forestry perspective, in our case from the farmers, what they want. We have criterias from the demand side, when that would be the industry for mass timber products. And then we have to find like the right species which matches like the both criteria best. And the ones from the farmers are clearly like, of course, it has to be a fast or medium growing species to have a faster return. It has to be suitable for the intercropping in the agroforestry systems. It shouldn't be a species which is extracting all the nutrients from the soil. And it has to be resistant to diseases and pests, and with a high survival rate, ideally. And when we look at the off-taker, like the demand side from a mass timber production, that would definitely be a timber with high mechanical properties, physical properties, like that it's easy to manufacture, like doing the finger joints, that the adhesion with the glue is good on the surface, and some biological and chemical properties, that it's not sensitive with fungi and termites. And then it's also about the standards. That is that timber already standardized? Do sorting and grading criteria exist for that species? And how is the building code with this specific species? So that's quite important. And also the traditional use and knowledge in the population is also quite important. And yeah, these are factors which are required, or the off-taker of mass timber production would ask for a good timber for producing a product. Yeah, now I would like to dive a bit into the quality. We have heard about that as well. We have to increase the quality of the timber to produce mass timber products. It needs to be kiln dried, and it needs to be sorted and graded according to a standard that we can finally design the beams or the panels or whatever, dimensioning it according to a accepted building code. We have to start with finger jointing, to make longer pieces, to cut out timber defaults, to joint it together again, to make longer and straight pieces. And we have to do testing of the timber, like to get the right values. We cannot just take a pine building or pine values from South Africa and use it in Nigeria or in Uganda. It has to be tested with the local circumstances, with the environment, the climate condition, the growing conditions, and so on. Yeah, and now I would like to jump into our Timber Innovation Center, what we have constructed as Fair Ventures, and that was mainly to cover a bit these topics which are in red now, like the acceptance. We want to create awareness of mass timber in East Africa. Then we were working with local engineers, local architects, and local craftsmen to develop that building. On the right side, you see the final building now. The idea was exactly what I just mentioned, like to design a showcase building and a facility to do trainings for architects, engineers, inviting authorities to see and really to touch a first building out of wood. We were collaborating with Hans, with Busoga Forestry Company in Uganda, to develop a first simple small-scale glue lamp press, very simple and manual. And we are able to glue lamp beams up to 7 meters with that press. And we tested different glues, we tested different ways to press it, and we tested them at the Makerere University in Kampala on the mechanical properties and see the strength of these beams. This is a beam which is was glued for the building, 7 meters long, around 500 millimeter height. And then we designed, we were looking for a site where we can establish that timber building. We collaborated with some local partners in Uganda and developed that design. This is the site, how the building looked before. It's an empty rooftop terrace, as we have many in Kampala. And as I mentioned before, timber is really useful for such extensions on existing buildings, since it's quite a light structure. And we have worked with some international carpenters, local carpenters, did some trainings in carpentry. And that was the prefabrication of the wall elements, the roof trusses, which was all prefabricated in a factory close to Kampala. These were the wall elements, roof trusses, and that's the whole after the prefabrication. We started with a steel frame. That's the only steel which is in the building, like as a foundation to connect the building with the existing one. And then timber floor. And then we assembled like piece by piece with the wall elements on site. So that was like after a couple of weeks. And then it developed quite fast. It was logistically quite stressful. These are the trusses, the inside, and these are the glue lamp beams, which have a span of like 6 meters. And they span the whole roof, like without any columns below. And that's the roof. And that's how it looked like after a month. And that's the final building. So that building is really a showcase for people to get more attention of mass timber buildings and to work exactly on these topics I showed before, to develop national and regional standards and to accept timber as a building material, to create a demand that also the industry finally is entering into the production of mass timber products. Yeah, I think that was from my side. Thank you very much for your attention.